So, in the late 1980s, Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC, was the world's second largest computer manufacturer, behind only the 500-pound gorilla of the industry, IBM. DEC made its mark on the field with their success in offering what were called mini computers. See, back in these days, if you wanted a computer, you had to clean out your basement and install this giant monolithic piece of equipment. You had to get a whole team of acolytes to run it for you. And computing power was scarce. And so it was reserved for only the most high-value business tasks, like running payroll or calculating insurance premiums. So what DEC was able to do is they were able to offer a line of smaller mini computers. Instead of being the size of your basement, they were maybe the size of a large refrigerator. And what this did is it enabled groups of people who could not get access to computing power before, the power to be able to have a computer of their very own. So an individual academic department or an individual engineering team might be able to have their own computer and be able to do whatever they wanted on it. DEC's real success came, this was their PDP line of computers, their real success came with the launch of this sexy badass right here, the PDP-8. So the PDP-8 was their most successful mini computer at the time. It enabled vastly different groups of people, like individual theater companies could have a computer to run the lights. I have this fantastic photograph. It's a grainy black and white photo. There's no way I could reproduce it, but it shows that a farmer who has loaded one of these things onto the back of his tractor so that he can do computerized potato picking, which, all other things considered, I think makes the PDP-8 the world's first mobile computer. This is Ken Olsen, their CEO. Doesn't he look happy? Look how happy he is. Well, of course he's happy. He's the CEO of the world's second largest computing company. He has a consistent track record of innovation. He has done his research. He has talked to his customers. He knows what the market wants. He has innovated repeatedly, understanding what his customers need and giving them new and more advanced products that will do what they want. And he knows that there is no reason for anyone to have a computer in their home. I mean, why would anybody want that? It goes against everything he knows about the computing market. He knows everything he knows about why people purchase computers, what their expectations are, and what they're going to do with them. I guarantee you right now, somebody in your company is saying, there's no reason anybody's going to need to do that on mobile. So, 1988. DEC has moved on from their wildly successful line of PDP computers to their even more successful VAX line of computers. Here's the VAX 11. It is the first computer to have first mini computer to have a 32-bit architecture. They sold 400,000 of these things, which was a record at the time. They're selling the VT125 integrated graphics terminal. This is the most powerful terminal on the market. It's sold to computer manufacturers, people who own computers from every manufacturer. This thing does fonts. It can make custom graphics. Rainbows shoot out of this thing. Look how happy this guy is. Doesn't he look happy? Okay, you can't really see how happy he is because of the giant mustache, but I assure you, people are wildly happy with the VAX and the VT125. And so, you would have to look at the marketplace right here, okay? It's the late 1980s. They are at the top of their game. They're putting out products and services that delight their customers, and there's just really no reason to believe that their entire industry is going to be destroyed by one of these cheap pieces of crap. I mean, look at them. This is not the VT125 integrated graphics terminal. This is a black and white television set from Radio Shack. This is not the VAX 11 32-bit mainframe architecture. This is a cassette tape deck. It stores its memory on a cassette tape. It's only got the one stupid little rainbow. Rainbows don't even shoot out of these things. (1988). DEC is the world's second largest computer manufacturer. They're the second largest employer in the state of Massachusetts, behind only the state government. In 1990, just 2 years later, DEC posts their first quarterly loss, and they start doing layoffs. Sales are ravaged by those cheap pieces of plastic. In 1991, they post their first full year loss. They would lose money in 5 out of the next 7 years. And in 1998, just 10 years later, a decade, they are out of business, gone. They're acquired by the manufacturer of those cheap toys. This has got to be like crazy unprecedented, right? I mean, there's no way Ken Olsen could have ever anticipated that something like this could happen. I mean, this has got to be one of the strangest flukes in the history of American business, right? Not even close. In fact, this is one of the most well-documented phenomena in American business. In industry after industry, the new technologies that brought the big, established companies to their knees, they weren't better. They weren't more advanced. In fact, they were actually worse. The new products were cheap, dumb, shoddy, and in almost every way inferior. Almost. Clayton Christensen had a theory, and he called it disruptive innovation. And what that theory said is that disruptive innovation happens from the low end. So new products and services come onto the marketplace, and even though they are not good, even though they are not better in any sense of quality on which you would judge the technology that came before them, in fact, they managed to disrupt the market for the larger, more powerful technology. And they do it because they do one thing, and they do one thing really well. They do one thing better than anything else. And that is that they give access to a technology, to a market, a population of people who never had access to that technology before. And this has happened time and time again. Think about radios. Look at this beautiful furniture radio. Look at this gorgeous piece of furniture. I mean, can you imagine buying one of these in the 30s or 40s? I mean, it would be a family heirloom. It would be something that your family would gather around. It would have rich, resonant sound quality. I mean, you would put care and time into the maintenance and upkeep of this beautiful item for your home because you would know that you were going to pass it down to your children. Except your teenager has bought one of these cheap pieces of plastic so she can take it to the beach. Now, a transistor radio is not better on any dimension on which you would actually measure the quality of a radio, right? I mean, the sound is tinny. You can't tune these things. I mean, they don't work very well. But the thing is, a transistor radio gave that teenager the power of having music for her very own. She didn't have to share it with her parents. It was something she could take with her wherever she wanted to. And so in just a few years' time, in less than a decade, transistor radios disrupted the market for the larger furniture radios. The craftsmen, the companies that made those large furniture radios, their names are lost to history. The name of the manufacturer of the first transistor radio? Sony. You just watched this happen with photography. We all participated in this. Now, everybody knew that digital technology was going to disrupt the market for film. But what nobody anticipated, or what we didn't see coming, was that digital technology would disrupt the market for even cameras themselves. We have all given up the need, or most of us have given up the need for it to carry a camera other than in high-end circumstances because we're satisfied with the camera that we have with us. And even though your phone maybe doesn't always take the best photographs, you now have access to a technology all the time, and it's disrupted the market. Kodak is bankrupt. Instagram is worth $1 billion. That is disruptive innovation. So, what happened here? Oh, it's Adobe Updater. Hello. So you can see where I'm going with this, right? Clayton Christensen, the guy who came up with the theory of disruptive innovation, his most embarrassing prediction was that the iPhone would fail. And Steve Jobs actually showed it to him, and Christensen, when he looked at the iPhone, he's a low-end guy, remember? Like, he believes disruption happens from the low end. And so when he saw, what the hell? No, Adobe Updater, but thank you very much. So when he saw the iPhone, Christensen looked at it, and all he saw was a fancy cell phone. All he saw was a really expensive cell phone that would, meet only the needs of the top end of the market. And he said, yeah, it's not going to work. What he didn't see was a really cheap computer. A really cheap computer that would put the power of technology and the internet into the hands of people who previously did not have access to it. The digital divide is real. It is easy for people like us to take for granted that everybody is just like us. Everybody has a computer, everybody has a broadband connection. Me, personally, I've had an internet connection at home since like 1994. I've had 4 or 5 computers in my home, and that doesn't even count all the mobile devices that I have. But in America today, 20% of Americans have no internet access. That number's not nearly as interesting to me as the second one. 35% of Americans don't have a broadband internet connection at home. Now, think about all the stuff that you do on your personal computer in the privacy of your home that you might not want your coworkers or your bosses or the prying eyes of strangers to watch you do. I don't know what you're thinking about, but I'm thinking checking a bank statement, or maybe researching a personal medical condition, looking for a new job, heck, even shopping for Christmas presents. These are all things that we take for granted. We can do with the privacy and the always-on connection of our personal internet access. 1/3 of Americans don't have that. Similarly, it's 20% of Brits, 18% of Germans, 40% of Portuguese don't have a broadband internet connection at home. In the US, these numbers are even higher for populations of people who are traditionally disadvantaged. So about 1/3 of Black Americans and about half don't have a broadband connection at home. The numbers are about the same for Hispanic Americans. 1/3 don't have any internet access, and about half don't have a broadband connection. If you are low income in the US, you make less than $30,000 a year, you're not really likely to have internet. It's like you got to put food on the table, you got to put gas in the car, you got to pay the rent. Internet is going to seem like a distant luxury. But the truth is, there's a lot of resources and products and services that are only available to people online. In the US, 80% of Fortune 500 companies only advertise their job listings on the internet. You don't have access to the internet, you don't have access to the tools to get yourself out of poverty. 57% of Americans who have only a high school education don't have access to the internet at all, and a whopping 88% don't have internet at home. Think about it. You don't have an education, so it means you don't have a job, so it means you don't have any money, so it means you don't have internet. And that leaves crystal meth. You want to know what everybody does have? Everybody has a phone. In the United States today, 88% of people have a mobile phone. It is not considered to be a luxury. It is considered to be a staple of human life. In the next few years, you're going to see that number go up to about 95%, and it is going to stay that way until all of us die. A mobile phone is going to be considered like having a television set or like having a landline was back in the day. It is just a basic requirement of human life. These numbers haven't gone up that much. You want to know what has skyrocketed? People who say they've accessed the internet from their mobile device. In just the last 3 years, this has skyrocketed to 55% of Americans. 55% of Americans say that they've gone online with their phone. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out this is smartphones, right? So the rise of smartphones means that for a population of people who do not have access to the internet through any other channel, now there is the rise of what I like to call the mobile-only user. So the mobile-only user, of this 55% of Americans who say that they've ever gone online with their phone, 31% say that that's the way that they only or mostly go online. And I've had people say, well, Karen, you know, if they say they mostly go online, that means they maybe have a computer at work or something they can use, which is why I want to emphasize how important it is to everybody that you have your own personal computer that you can do whatever you want with. I mean, yeah, these people might have access to a PC at work or at school, but for them, their mobile phone, that's their computer. The numbers are even higher for populations that haven't had access to the internet. It's 39% of Americans who only have a high school education, 43% of Americans who are low income, 42% of Americans who are Hispanic, and a whopping 51% of Black Americans, more than half, rely on their mobile device as their primary way that they access the internet. I had somebody point out to me the other day that this population is much larger than the population of people who are on Internet Explorer. Think about how many conversations you've had about how to figure out what to do with IE. How many conversations have you had in your organization about how to provide a great experience for the population of people who will never see your desktop website because the only way they access the internet is on their phone? Just to show that I am not a completely ugly American, it is 22% of British people, 38% of Chinese people, 59% of Indians, and a whopping 70% of Egyptians. Mobile was the final frontier in the access revolution. Mobile has erased the digital divide. A mobile device is the internet for many people. Which is why it's great we're doing such a good job on mobile, right, guys? Yeah? Now, what do you think these people see when they go to the internet? They see sites formatted for a monitor that's 5 times the size. They see broken hover states, search that doesn't work. They see tiny text. They see an experience that's not unlike trying to read a newspaper through a toilet paper tube. And when we don't give these people an experience that is every bit as good as someone could get on the desktop, we are basically telling them that they are second-class citizens, that they do not deserve access to the same resources or tools or content or information that somebody who has a quote-unquote real computer can get on their real desktop. Now, I want to reiterate that what Clayton Christensen believes. Disruption happens from the low end. So even if you're like, yeah, Karen, I'm not really so worried about low-income people, that's not my point. My point is that in industry after industry, the low-end, cheap technology, because it is now made available to these people who we think are second-class citizens, that low-end technology winds up disrupting the market for the higher-end products. So if you're telling yourself, oh, well, you know, everybody's going to be able to go back and use their real computer to do that, you're saying the exact same thing that Ken Olsen said. Look how well that turned out for him. So what are you going to do now? So I don't stand up here to say, wait, shake my finger at you and be like, go get something on mobile right this second. In fact, just the opposite. This is tough stuff, and it takes planning and time, which is why you need a content strategy for mobile, which this totally weird coincidence. It's kind of random how this stuff happens. I just happen to have a book of the same title, which came out last year, which you can buy from a book apart. So I want to give you 3 things that you can do right now. Go back to your office and you can do them right now to start planning for how you're going to deliver a great experience on mobile. Number one is that you gotta know your workflow. You gotta know what your content production process is today. Who is creating content? What tools are they using? How are they collaborating? What are their pain points? Where are things falling through the cracks? When I go in and talk to companies, I realize that so often the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing as far as content is concerned. And we're making it worse. In so many organizations, they have essentially baked into their org structure that they have forked their organization. So now web is on one team and mobile is on another team. And not only do they not get incentives to work together, the mobile team is in fact incentivized to go off and do their own thing. And so what you see is an example like this one from Comcast. Comcast is a cable provider and a mobile phone provider in the US, and shockingly, they discovered that people were coming to their website from mobile devices. And so they said, great, we're gonna put up a mobile website. And what they did is if you look at these 2 pages, they rewrote this page. They went in and they edited down the text, they changed the language. These pages say exactly the same thing. The mobile website is shorter, and in fact, I'm gonna go on record and say the mobile website is better. It's clearer, it's more succinct, it's easier to read. But if they made it better, why didn't they make it better for everyone? Which you can tell by looking at these pages. The desktop website was last updated in March of 2012. The mobile website, last updated, July 2011. They forked their content. And now every time they have to make a change to that content, they've got to go in and do it in 2 places. They've made their updating and their maintenance processes painful and more difficult for their editorial team because they encourage their organization to incentivize people not to work together. It's not a strategy if you can't maintain it. And so too often what I see on mobile is that we have used mobile as a way to make our difficult and painful and cumbersome editorial workflow even worse. We can't do that. Instead, here's your opportunity to go in, understand what that process is, and use mobile as a catalyst to make it better for everybody. Second thing you can do right now, you can write better, okay? Like, you can go out and you can edit your content down so that it's cleaner and simpler and easier to read. Now, one of my pet peeves of this industry is when you go and you see these articles that are like, here's how to write for mobile, 4 tips for writing mobile website text. Here's how you write for mobile, top 10 tips. Here's how to write content for mobile sites, which is illustrated by a picture of a man using his laptop on the street. This one, I think, summarizes my viewpoint on how to write for a mobile audience best. See, the thing is, there's no such thing as how to write for mobile. There's just good writing. All of the tips that you see in those articles, how to write for mobile, are the exact same tips we gave people on how to write for the web. And frankly, they're the exact same tips that we were using 20 years ago to tell people how to write good technical documentation. Write shorter sentences. Put the most important ideas up front. Use headings and bullet points to break up the text. These are all basic things that you could be doing right now today to improve your content. The American Cancer Society, when they were planning their mobile strategy, they had a lot of options, right? They could have said, hey, let's deliver a subset of our content on mobile. Let's make mobile the fun-sized candy bar version of our website. Let's focus on the needs of the on-the-go cancer patient. What the American Cancer Society realized, though, was that when they looked at the population of people who were more likely to be accessing their website from a mobile device, they saw that that population of people matched up neatly with the people that I was telling you about before. They're the people who didn't have a broadband connection, and they relied on their mobile device for access. And so their head of digital told me they realized they had a life-saving imperative to get all of their content on mobile. It would be disrespectful to suggest to a user coming in on a mobile device that they should get less content than the person who came in on the desktop. They had every bit of an important life-saving need to care for themselves or a family member, and they deserved all the same content. And so you know what? They did it. If you go through their website, you can dissect these pages, and you realize they've done a phenomenal job of getting every bit of content from the desktop onto the mobile site. They've presented in a way that is navigable, it is readable, and most important, it's respectful of the people who are going in, who need the same information and resources and services as everybody else does. They just happen to be looking at it on a smaller screen. And they were able to do this, not because they went in and had to redesign and rewrite all their content for mobile. It was just good content. Good content transcends platform. If you have great content that is well-structured and well-written today, you don't have to worry about how you're going to edit it down or change it for mobile. You can make the leap to mobile now. So how are you going to do that? Well, underneath it all is your content management system. And underneath it all, you have to go in and make sure that you aren't storing your content in messy, blobby, formatting-rich blobs of text that have a bunch of garbage and HTML and presentation information in it. No, you need structured content. You need clean, presentation-independent chunks of content that are at the right level of granularity, not all one big mass of a page, but instead finer grains of content so that you can get them out onto a variety of places. And the truth is, when I talk about this, I gave this talk recently, and somebody came up to me afterwards, and she was like, oh, well, we're just going to use responsive design to fix that problem. And I'm like, responsive design's not going to solve your content problem. Responsive design is not going to help you make sure that your content isn't stored in a blob. Responsive design isn't going to help you make sure that you have content at the right level of granularity to be presented on mobile. You still have an underlying problem in your CMS and the way that your content is structured. And so you need to think about, instead, creating your content as a flexible, reusable system. And it's kind of hard when I'm saying, like, don't create content for a specific context, to imagine, well, okay, well, what does she mean? Aren't I going to have to imagine, like, this is the desktop content and this is the mobile content? You don't have to. That's the magic. I've done a lot of work with publishers. I led the redesign of the New York Times a few years back. And one of the things you learn when you work with publishers is you don't get to decide for any given page or any given application what size of image is going to go on that screen. They have a standard set of crop sizes that they cut. And by God, you use those crop sizes wherever you need to. You get to pick one of these 6 or 7 sizes, and that's what goes on the screen. Is it perfect in every context? Absolutely not. There's lots of scenarios in which you discover, oh, well, this image isn't really quite right for this context, but it's close enough and you make it work. So if you can imagine the idea that in 2005, you could come up with a system of different image sizes that would basically work as you adopted all these new platforms and devices, then you can kind of start to imagine, hey, right, what if I thought about creating different reusable sizes of text? And I wasn't thinking about where they were going to go necessarily. I was just thinking about that system to give me more flexibility. One of the things that both infuriates me and somewhat delights me on mobile is the extent to which people feel like they have to truncate their headlines. Daily Beast truncates their headlines while still giving generous real estate to a summary. They even managed to repeat the author byline twice. NPR truncates their headlines in their mobile app. The Guardian even has an entire Tumblr dedicated to the tireless men and women who shorten headlines so they'll fit on your phone. And when you look at a problem like this, I find it vexing, because on the one hand, why not just give enough space in the design so that you can fit that whole headline? I mean, isn't that the whole point of the headline, is that you can read it and then decide if you want to actually tap on it and see the story? But when you look at a problem like this, you say, oh, right, you know what? We might need different sizes of headlines. Like, we might need to think about, hey, what if I had a short form that was 60 characters? I could send that to Twitter, I could send that to SEO, I might be able to use that on mobile. Maybe I need a long form that's like a 200-character version that I can use where I've got lots of generous real estate. Maybe I even want to think about the tone that I use. Like, maybe my one form needs to just be jammed full of SEO keywords so the robots can chew on it. And maybe another version can have, more colloquial, flowery language like the marketing department likes. Maybe it could have some puns in there. And I could think about this as a system where I maybe write 2 headlines. I've got 2 versions now. And then I can choose which one I want to send to which platform. You don't create content for a specific context. Instead, just like with my image crops example, you kind of take a step back from it and say, what are the different sizes and types of content that I'm going to need to create that I can think of as a flexible, reusable system? There's no presentation, styling information embedded in them. I can do more with those things so that now when I need to get my content onto mobile or apps or tablets or, gosh, even Google Glass or digital watches, my content's going to be ready to go there. Because here's the thing. Right now, in the future, none of us get to decide what device somebody uses to access our content. We don't get to pick that. They get to decide that. And it's our mission, it's our responsibility to give them a good experience in whatever platform or channel or device they choose to use. And so what that means is that these new technologies that are giving access to people who never had it before, they're eventually going to get good. And you know what? You all of us, we're the ones that are going to make that happen. We are going to redefine what good means for mobile. And it's not going to be exactly the same as it meant on the desktop. Instead, it's going to be this emerging new medium where the definition of quality and the definition of what makes it work is going to change. And I think that's exciting, because here's our chance, guys. This is our chance to sweep away outdated editorial practices, to get rid of processes that aren't failing us, to clean up our content management systems, and really to do mobile right. We can start right now. Thank you.